All right. Hey, everyone. This is G here for SENY. Welcome. We're super excited to be back. And we're back virtual too. So the panelists, AKA the other SENY founders and I joined minutes ago, and it was like a mini reunion. We haven't seen each other in person or otherwise in a while, so it was cool to just get together. So I hope this is the same for you guys, even though it's virtual. We want to, be here for you. We know it's been a tough time, especially for us New Yorkers. But that's the thing about pre-sales engineers and about New Yorkers. We're tough, but we're also together, and that's what we want to do is have a time to get back together and in a digital format, what we do best as software folks. So with that, I want to go around and say hi to the crew. Good to see you guys. Give a shout. What's up, Akshat?
Hey everyone, thank you so much, guys, and appreciate everyone's time, especially during such tough times. And we just want to make sure that everyone is okay, and we're all here to support each other. Thank you so much for your time and for joining.
All right, don't be shy, Eric, Sam, Owen.
Hey everyone, hope everyone's safe and healthy. Good to see everyone. Thanks for coming out. Excited for the webinar tonight.
Yeah, hey everyone. Super excited to have Chris White here hosting our first webinar virtually. Hope everyone's safe. Hopefully everyone's had some time to balance through this kind of new world that we're going through. And if you guys need help or anything, feel free to reach out to the Slack group. We're all here to help each other out during this difficult time.
Hey everybody, excited to have everybody. We have a bunch of new faces and people from all over the country, so I'm excited to do our first SENY virtual event. So welcome everybody.
So that's the crew. So that's myself, G, Akshat, Eric, Sam, Owen. We got the full crew today, which is pretty rare. And I'm super excited to see you guys and to talk to you guys and joke around with you guys. But just like the folks said, this is a community first, right? It's centered around a profession, but we're really here to help each other. And that's what we've always been doing, right? We have a lot of success stories on folks, looking to break into the role. We've helped folks, give tips and pointers. That's what we've been about. And, we're just doing it in a different circumstance, albeit it's a tougher one, but we're here for you. So we're going to talk about ways to connect later, but for now, just a real quick recap. If you're new here, welcome. So Sales Engineer of New York is what we are, is a premier community of sales engineers and folks who are interested in the sales engineer role, which is AKA pre-sales, AKA solution consultant. There's a lot of words for it, specifically for New York. So what's super exciting and is that we're branching out to other cities. But before that, I want to give a quick shout out to our sponsors. Lupio. So Lupio is a Toronto-based company, and they're sponsoring us today. So what we do, we don't make any money out of this. What we do is we in our physical meetups, which we used to have before all this, we used to have a sponsor pay for food. Today, we have Lupio as a sponsor. Obviously, we don't have a physical space for food. However, we're giving away an iPod Pro later via Raffle, so stick around. If you registered, you're cool, you're entered. So Lupio, even though they're giving an iPod, that's not the only reason why you should like them. They are an excellent RFP software company that helps you respond to RFP. I know in one of my roles, I remember we had to deal with security RFPs that are very, very long. And, you don't want to spend a lot of time doing that. You want something that kind of streamlines that. That's what Lupio does. We met a bunch of their folks. They're super cool to work with. So what we want to promote is their webinar coming up. So please join them to discuss finishing security questionnaires, which are very, very cumbersome, 7 times faster. So we'll have, at that webinar, they'll have CISOs, SC managers explain how they respond back within 2 weeks to 2 days using this tool. So please register for the webinar. And again, that's on April 7th, as you see. And we will follow up with a link. I think we might have the link already. But again, shout out to Lupio for sponsoring this. We love working with you guys. And to Good Software, we only promote stuff that I know Eric, who you saw, can vouch for that. He uses it. So thank you. All right. And as I mentioned, we have a super exciting announcement. Our very first chapter. So we love New York, and I know there's some beef between New York and Boston sports, but because sports is no longer a factor, it's a way to be friends with Boston. I'm just kidding, guys. On the picture here, you'll see the 4 founders, but today we actually have one of them join us, and I want Nick Masters to come and say hi. Give a shout out.
Right. Yeah, thank you very much. Really appreciate the time. This is a huge milestone for this group, everybody here, and anybody who is a sales engineer, tech seller in the Boston area. It's a great opportunity as the technology industry continues to boom in the Boston area. So does sales engineering. It's really important for us to be able to be in that environment and share thoughts and anything we can learn from one another in this community. So we're thrilled to be a part of the SENY team and be able to extend this out into the Boston group. So you might have been able to see some of our announcements. We just launched and went live on Monday. So go check us out on LinkedIn, salesengineersboston.com, and we are affiliated with the SENY team as well. So we will continue to co-sponsor various different events and work with each other, virtual or live, once we get to that environment again. So really appreciate the time, and looking forward to meeting everyone.
Thanks, Nick. Super excited to have you on board. You guys are doing an awesome job kind of ramping up really quickly in terms of the digital presence and all that. And one of the good things about this is we're all virtual. We're able to kind of reach our own networks. So I anticipate, our next event, which we're going to talk about, which is a happy hour / lunch hour, will be across with our Boston group. So we'll see how it goes. And it'll be a more of a mixer type format versus this. We'll see how it goes because it might be a large crew, but I think Zoom has a breakout. But we'll figure out the logistics. We'll make it work. That's what SEs do, right? But Nick, super excited to have you and the other guys. So we have Leon, Pat, and Praveen, as well as Nick, come together and organize. So super excited for the next event, Nick.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for having us. Looking forward to today.
Yep. All right. So now we're at the heart of our content. I want to introduce our speaker today, who's his name is Chris White. Chris, how are you doing? And thank you for being here.
I'm doing just great, G. Thank you so much. And I'm delighted to be here. First of all, I'll be a good sales engineer. Can you guys hear me okay?
I can.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I'm just delighted to be here. I'll echo what, a lot of people said. First and foremost, I just want to say, particularly to my friends in New York and to my new friends in New York, you guys are in our thoughts and prayers. I'm based down here in DC. We're all in this together, but I know New York has been, hit particularly hard by this situation. And I just hope the next, 35, 45 minutes, maybe takes your mind a little bit off of some of the stuff that you're dealing with and gives you reason to, smile and relax and at least feel a little bit connected. So, G, thank you so much. And Akshat and the whole team, thank you so much for inviting me, and I'm just delighted to be here.
Absolutely. No, those are for sure. I think I have to admit to you, Chris, and I was a bit conflicted, and the one thing that I was struggling with and nervous about was the tone of this, and even before this, while we were planning and all this happened, I was thinking, should we even have SENY like future events, right? It would have seemed trivial to like talk about pre-sale stuff.
Yeah.
But just like I said before, primarily this group is about community, and that's what we need more than ever now.
Yeah.
And in every context, right? And I would say, there's a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean we stop adapting, trying to get better, kind of connecting with each other, which it's always been our strength.
Yeah.
So I think, we made a decision to, rather than put it off, we wanted to kind of embrace it. We pushed this event closer. We said, we're gonna, it's gonna be the first time, but uncomfortable, but we're gonna push forward.
Yeah. Well, and you're right. I think there's strength in trying to forge ahead with life. I mean, everybody's dealing with such unknown circumstances. Our personal lives have been turned upside down. Our professional lives have been turned upside down. And I mean, we talked about this, a week or two ago. I mean, for many of us, some of us are working harder than we've ever worked, right? And others have more time, more free time than we're used to having. So, I agree. I think it's good for us to come together. And I was speaking to an SE leader just the other day. In fact, she's based in New York. And she said, Chris, honestly, it almost feels like our personal lives and our professional lives have come together more than ever, and like it's more okay than ever before to just be a person, right, in our professional life. And actually, that may not be such a bad thing. So no, I'm glad that we decided to move forward, and I think it's good.
Yeah, I saw a very apt tweet today. To paraphrase it, it basically said, "We're not working from home. We're dealing with a crisis, but happen to be working or trying to work while we're in a crisis at home."
Yeah.
So that in a lot of ways, I guess I move back and forth between we should move on to like how can we just like treat this as normal. So. So, we'll try to do it justice. And again, we're thinking about folks who are probably impacted a lot.
Yeah.
As things get progressed, we know that more people are going to be impacted. So our hearts are with you.
For sure.
And I really like what you said about, being authentic. I think that's a component of what we are SEs, right? And our kind of like our secret weapon.
Yeah, I completely agree. And, it's interesting. I mean, I know we're going to get into the content, a little bit deeper in a minute, but, I think one of the mistakes that we make sometimes is that we show up to a customer meeting sometimes feeling like we have to have all the answers and feeling like almost we have to be robots, right? And the reality is more times than not, that almost works against us, right? People buy from people, right? And authenticity and sincere interest and curiosity in your customers and in the people you're working with is far more compelling and engaging, than just being a smart, intelligent robot, right? So the reality is that if this makes us all a little bit more authentic, we may actually become better sales engineers as a result. So, in that sense, there's maybe a silver lining.
Yep, absolutely. So you wrote a book called 6 Habits of a Highly Effective Sales Engineer.
Yeah.
So I like the fact that you kind of try to distill it into, memorizable, framework that's pretty simple to which is great, because I think if you're starting out, you can go many different paths, but if you kind of distill it down, it helps you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, you're right. And it's interesting. I was just chatting with a gentleman the other day, and I said, the interesting thing about sales engineers is that many of the best sales engineers didn't start out that way, right? And I'm the first one to raise my hand there. When I first got in, and a few people have heard me say this before, when I first got into the role, I thought it was going to be brilliant because I could move a mouse and talk at the same time, right? And I realized very quickly that there was a lot more to being a sales engineer than just being smart and good in front of an audience. And I'm the first to admit that I made some mistakes early on and I took some lumps, but then I started to figure it out. and it was really a progression. And I know we're going to talk a little bit about what that progression was sort of through the habits. But what was interesting was that about 5 years into my career, I took over a team of pre and post sales consultants, and they were very, very good in their field. They were experts in their fields and really hardworking people. But I just discovered that they were making some of the, many of the same mistakes that I was making when I had first gotten into it. And I didn't have training, so I needed to create some training for the team. And that was about a decade ago. And then, and just over the years, that has sort of distilled. I love your word. It's just sort of distilled down to these six, on some level, basic habits or practices that if we follow, we're going to make lives a lot easier for ourselves. We're gonna be much better in our role, and frankly, we're going to be a lot happier. So, anyway, so yes, that's sort of how it evolved.
And I bet 10 years ago, there wasn't as much material as there is now. You kind of had to, figure out yourself through experience, right?
Absolutely. Well, in fact, and I always shout out to John Kerr and Peter Cohan. I mean, those are sort of the godfathers of our space, right? I mean, Peter wrote The Great Demo, great book. He's been giving classes for years. John wrote, Mastering Technical Sales. Again, he's been doing it for years, and they sort of paved the way for us. But you're right. I believe that our role is the most underserved role in sales training and sales enablement, and has been for years. And it's just starting. I'm sensing a shift, right? I mean, this organization is a perfect example. You guys have 500 members. That's incredible, right? And now, Nick and the team just started one in Boston. So I do think that there's somewhat of a momentum around the sales engineer.
Yeah, I've definitely seen a trend of even though it's still kind of a niche profession, niche role, folks in college, no idea what it is. But that's changing. So my company has an associate SC program, for example, who targets, fresh grads. So you see that in organizations picking up. So we're starting to get respect, which is great. And the other trend that we talked about is we're starting to see us as a target for vendors, the Lupios of the world, the V-Buns, targeting us. So again, trending toward becoming a more important, recognized role.
Yeah. And it's interesting too. I feel like our secret is starting to get out, again, and by the way, I talk to sales, and this is one of the things I love about what I'm doing now. I talk to sales engineers and sales engineer leaders all day, every day. So I get so many interesting perspectives, and I just hear so many neat things. And I was talking to a gentleman literally just yesterday, and he and he and I had never met, and we just got on a phone call. And by the end of the phone call, he said, Chris, it's kind of like a brotherhood, and that's probably not fair to the ladies in the group. So it's a sisterhood and brotherhood. Maybe it's a family, right? But we understand each other, right? Right. And by the way, a lot of the sales counterparts that we work with may or may not understand us, right? And so we, we're wired a certain way, and I do think that sort of makes us sort of a unique sort of network of people, for sure.
Right, for sure. So if you can, please take us through how your 6 principles, kind of the evolution of it and the origin of it. And then also if you can add, how this new, and this is all new for all of us, including you. Yeah. This new, I've heard it called the Great Remote Experiment. So that, that's one aspect of it, but then there's the other aspect for us as New Yorkers. We have to have empathy toward our customers as well as our team members. So those are factors that you kind of have to take an account for whatever you do as an SE, right?
Yeah, no, and again, I mean, already we've used 2 words that I think are so impactful, right? You mentioned authenticity, right? And empathy. Like, wow, we could almost end the webinar now and people could just walk away remembering those 2 words. And I think it's time well spent. So a little bit of background, as I mentioned a moment ago, when I first got in the role, I thought I was going to be brilliant. And here was the interesting thing for me, G, and I've seen other people who have sort of fallen into this as well. I honestly didn't think of myself as being in sales. I still thought of myself as the technology guy, right? And I just thought that my role has just sort of changed now. I'm the person that the sales people just call in to give a technical presentation, answer technical questions. And in fact, and for anybody who's read the book, I mean, I talk about this in the prelude, I was literally at a dinner party when I first got into this, or a cocktail party when I first got into the role. And I was chatting with a fella in the neighborhood who I'd met, and he asked me what I did. And I went to great lengths to tell him about enterprise architecture and technology. And then I said, well, actually, I'm now, I just recently got a job where I'm now giving demos as part of a sales, engagement. And he kind of lit up and he said, oh, you're in software sales. And I, at the time I thought, yeah, I guess so. And here's the interesting thing. When we cross that chasm, right? And I think a lot of us do, when we cross that chasm into we're in sales, then now we have to look at our sales counterparts differently, right? Because sales is a team sport.
Yep.
And so once we come to peace with that, we need to realize and acknowledge that we now need to treat that relationship as a partnership, and we're in this together, and we have different roles, right, and different responsibilities, but we're a team. And as I said, we're wired differently, and so there is just some built-in sort of potential for conflict there, and
Yep.
we need to take some ownership there and really work at that relationship. So that's sort of how habit number one, which is to partner with our sales counterparts, evolved. I'll pause there because that was a bit of an earful. Does that resonate with you, G?
It does. And I think one of, when we have our, in-person meetups, and we have, especially, so what we usually do is we go to a bar right after a kind of a more, a seminar type thing. Akshat does a great job of picking a bar nearby. And sure enough, once you start drinking, the top complaint is, hey, my rep that I work with is doing X. Oh yeah, mine too. So yeah, it's common for that kind of personality clash. So it's funny that you said that when you started out your career, I think almost everyone goes through that. I definitely went through the phase of, I don't know anything about sales, but I consider myself strong technical, so I'll stick to that. But, I don't test the sales stuff. Then you get to a phase where it's like, oh, I can do that person's job because I'm the one who's putting the hours. But then you get to, more gray hairs, then you're like, man, I would never take a sales job. It's so much involved. So I think there's kind of this evolution that everyone goes through. But I think that's addressing it a little bit. But, I think the partnership is important. And I would say that getting together as a team with your coworkers has been challenging and during these times for folks who haven't been doing it already from a digital standpoint.
Yeah. And, you said so many things there, and I wish, I mean, we could probably spend an hour just talking about the habit number one. Incidentally, I just want to let everybody know that I was supposed to be, in person with you guys on the 23rd, and we would have been having that beer together. So I'm looking forward to an invitation to actually come in person, and at one of these days we'll actually have that beer together. And the other thought that I had is while we're, having a beer, sort of complaining about our sales, counterparts, I'm sure they're somewhere having a beer complaining about us.
No, we're perfect.
So, but, and if I can sort of, bring it back to sort of today, I think one of the things you mentioned, I think one of the things we really need to do is we just need to be proactive, right? Here's the reality. They're going through this too, right? And they're scared and they're confused and they're uncertain. And I think now's a perfect time for us to drop whatever, sort of issues might be there, and certainly egos, and just reach out if you haven't and just say, how you doing, right? Are there some customers that you're worried about that, I should maybe call, right? Is there something in particular, anything I can do, right? So I do think now more than ever that partnership, those relationships are critical.
Yeah, for sure.
So I know you wanted me to sort of step through, just, sort of going on to habit number two. What was interesting for me was once I sort of bridged that gap and sort of accepted that I was in sales, and I started to understand the sales process. To be very candid, I developed a little bit of an ego, and I developed a little bit of an arrogance, and I sort of got to the point where I was like, man, I am firing on all cylinders. And I sort of told, and I was, at the time, I was supporting probably 4 or 5, salespeople. And I said, I'm your guy. You've got a, a demo or a deal. You just put it on my calendar. I'm going to be there, and I'm going to just rock their world, And
Right.
Here's what happened. I started showing up to these customer meetings, customer engagements, demonstrations, sight unseen, and found that more than once I was not prepared. And what I discovered was, had I done some discovery of my own, and had I asked some questions myself, I would have clarified what it was they were trying to do, what it was they were looking for. Even if the salesperson came to me and said, this is what they're doing and this is what we need to do, he or she is not asking the same questions I'm asking, right? He or she isn't looking, and they don't necessarily know how that translates into what do we actually demo. So what I discovered, and I guess I use that with as a bit of a pun, I discovered that I had to do discovery myself before I went in. And what happened was, when I had the opportunity to do so, and then I had the time to prepare, and that's habit number 3, the demos were 100 times better, and our results were much better. So that's really how habit number 2, which is to probe into any inquiry, probe into any customer request, evolved. So I'll pause there.
No,
You're shaking
awesome.
your head.
Yeah.
It sounds like you can relate to that.
I can, and I think a lot of people, it's funny how you explained how you ran into a friend and explained your job is the demo. Everyone associates our job as that's the primary thing.
Right.
But really, the demo is kind of the finale. What's leading up to it is the hours of discovery, of kind of prep. But discovery is very underrated. But it's funny how you correlated to your past, and it's because of you called it ego. And I would say I went through that cycle that I alluded to, where you feel like you don't know anything, then you feel like, oh, I'm in sales and
you're indestructible.
I know the product, and why do I need to even prepare or ask questions to the customer? I have all the answers. So it's funny because I went through that cycle. But now I'm like toward, much like you and your principal, I'm always asking the account team, hey, like, give me the whole history, and we need to do more still, right?
Absolutely. And it's interesting. What you just said, I want to play or sort of elaborate on what you just said, because that's really important, I think. Recently, somebody asked me, which do I think is the most important habit? And I said, well, there's 2 answers. To me, habit number 1, the partnership is arguably the most important, because it's the foundation for all the other habits. To me, the other habits really depend on having a good partnership with your sales counterpart, right? That being said, if somebody were to ask me, what's the most important habit in terms of the success of a given deal, I would say habit number 2, probe. If I'm effective with my discovery, and I can clearly identify what are they really trying to do, and ultimately what do they need to see in our solution to choose us, and I can show that to them in the context of what they're trying to do, that's where deals are won and lost in my opinion. Right. So I truly believe. Now here's the interesting thing, and again, sort of turning it on to like today's world. I've never seen an environment that was more fluid and flexible than we are right now.
Right.
I've had more meetings changed, like on an hour-by-hour basis, than ever before. And this is probably the one time where I would be the most forgiving of my salespeople, if my sales counterparts, if they said to me, I've got a meeting with so-and-so, and I just need you on, and I don't know much, but we just need to get on and have a conversation. I'd probably be more forgiving about not doing technical discovery now than ever before. As much as that's my normal rule. And I would just go into it sort of in the back of my mind thinking, I'm not going to show anything without doing at least a little bit of discovery sort of in real time. But the irony, and any salesperson who's ever worked with me knows, like, don't schedule me for a demo unless you give me a chance to do discovery. I'd be willing to waive on that in, sort of in these circumstances.
Yeah, definitely. I would agree. I think my schedule is very fluid at this point. The other thing that I was thinking about on the topic of probe is discovery is not just the business problem. In my opinion, discovery is putting yourself in the shoe of the customer, and sometimes the exact person that you're dealing with on the customer side. Yes. And you put it to today's times, and I think we have more leeway also to kind of probe to see how folks are doing, and I think it's the right thing to do, right? To check on how they're doing in the home life. I think we have more leeway now, even if it's someone we don't know or we just met. It's okay to say, hey, are your kids at home? How you're dealing with things? These are not normally questions we would ask in normal times. But if someone asked me that, I'd be like, wow, thank you for asking me, And it's not really, and I'm not saying that we should use this as a sales tactic. I'm just saying you should do so as a person, right?
I completely agree. I mean, normally, or sometimes it might almost feel like prying. And now that wouldn't feel like prying in the least. I completely agree. I mean, it's almost like we can be more human now than ever before. And I think it's, what it is? It's sincere curiosity, right? It's sincere care for people. Like, we're just more human now. So,
yep.
Absolutely. So yeah, I think you're spot on.
Yeah. And in a way that's discovery, because it's important to make sure, your audience's position, their headspace is at, and to respond accordingly versus, kind of just, bulldozing through it.
Yeah. Well, and to your point, it might even be as simple as sort of the way you open this, webinar by saying, we don't want to make the mistake of assuming that our jobs and sales engineer is more important than what's going on at home, right? You might even start a conversation with, I just want to make sure that this is still a priority for you today, right? Because if you've got stuff going on at home, I certainly don't want to take you away. You know what I mean? So I think you're absolutely right, G. I love that. I love that. So here's the interesting thing, and sort of moving on to the next habit is, we talked about sort of establishing that partnership and working on the partnership and obviously doing discovery. What's interesting is that when we do discovery, now the onus is on us to actually prepare based on what we've discovered, right? If you don't do any discovery, then, you don't really have much to work with in terms of preparing. But when you do discover and that there's specific things that they're looking for, then really we need to invest the time to now prepare a demo that's bespoke and customized to their particular situation. And again, just like all the other habits, really evolved out of mistakes that I discovered myself making. When I got to this point, in my career where I started, sort of arming myself now with all this information for the customer, honestly, G, I started burning myself out preparing for demos, because in my mind, I was creating this elaborate thing that I could build and show. And by the way, what do we like to do? We're engineers. We like to build. We like to tinker, right? We like to create. So I was creating and burning unnecessary time creating these elaborate demos, and in many cases coming up with more material and content that I could even present in the amount of time that I had. Right?
Yeah.
And I was primarily focusing on just the thing and not necessarily the story. right? Not necessarily why are they going to be care about? What, you know, how does this matter to them? So what I discovered was that yes, we have to prepare, but we have to prepare with efficiency and effectiveness in mind. And that's when I sort of discovered the difference between preparing content, right? The thing versus the story that I'm going to tell, right? And in doing so, it sort of forced me to focus in the right place, which is the customer, not just our product and my creative genius and brilliance. Again, I'll pause there. Does that resonate?
It does. And I think if I would have read the table of contents without, you know, no description, and I saw prepare, I would think, okay, Chris is going to talk about making sure your demo is solid, that Murphy laws come to play, you have a backup plan ready to go. So I think that's my technical side showing, and I think that's common with all SEs in terms of personality. We gravitate toward what we're strong at, what we enjoy. So if I see prepare, I'll say, okay, I got to make sure I account for all, you know, exceptions. But really, that can be a danger, right? We kind of rabbit hole into in the actual discussion with the customer and in our preparation of aspects which don't necessarily matter or push the deal. The story, focusing preparation on the story first is really resonates with me, because, you know, that's the most effective part you should invest in terms of time.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Well, and again, we could probably spend 45 minutes just talking about, you know, this one. You know, one of my favorite sayings, some of you have heard me say this: he who buys a shovel, he or she who buys a shovel doesn't want a shovel. They want a hole, but they don't want a hole. They want a fence, or they want a tree, but they don't want a fence or a tree. They want privacy, or they want shade, right? But we as sales engineers, we're so in love with our shiny shovels.
Yep.
We want to show up and just talk about our wonderful shiny shovel and how, you know, the beautiful features are, right? And by the way, why do I say this? I was that guy. I mean, I made this mistake time and time again. For crying out loud, I still make the mistake, you know, every now and then, right? I get so excited about the solution and I forget about why it's important. So by focusing on the story, it really forces us to focus on what's important, which is to say, it forces us to focus on the customer and why does it matter to them, right?
Yep.
The final thing that I'll mention there is the other mistake that I would make, because I was building these I was taking pride in building such elaborate demos. If I got into the demo, what am I trying to do? If I built it, by golly, I want to show it, right? And so and in some cases, I've got too much to show in the amount of time. So now I'm sort of rushing through my demo, paying only attention to my script, right? And not focusing on them. So this is how habit number 3 evolved, which was I just need to be more efficient and more effective, and I need to focus in the right place when preparing for a demo.
Awesome. Yeah. And in order to know what to prepare for in terms of the story to hone in on, you have to have done your probing properly, right? And then if someone's doing that probing alongside with you, aka your partner, then your surface area of success is increased, right?
Well said.
I'm starting to see how they're all connected. Well done.
Yep. Well, and so to that end, let's go to habit number 4, because it actually touches on what you were starting to say. And incidentally, before I go there, I know we're going to try to tie each one of them to sort of today's world. The one comment about prepare that I'll just make is for those of you out there who may find yourself with a little bit of extra time. Again, I just want to caution you. We default to building and tinkering. Not that that's a bad thing now, but if you haven't reached out to your sales counterparts, if you haven't reached out to your customers, do that first, right? Let's use this time to do those things first, and then if you've got extra time, then we can start to fiddle, fuss, and build and all that. So, in any event, moving then, now that I've prepared, again, let me share with you the mistake that I made and, sort of, drove habit number 4. The mistake that I made is I was preparing so much, I was not budgeting time to practice. I was not budgeting time to like make sure everything's working, because I'm like adding stuff in at the last minute. And then I get in front of a customer. And by the way, what's the one thing we don't want in front of a customer? A surprise. The one thing that I don't want after a click is a surprise, right?
Yep.
And I'd have those moments that we've all had where I'd click into something sort of expecting that magical moment, and something would break. And then invariably, more times than not, I'd realize that it was a 5-second change, or it was one little thing that I forgot to do, one checkbox or something. Had I just checked it the night before or the morning of, I would have found it, I would have fixed it, and that wouldn't have happened. And so what I realized was I just wasn't budgeting time to practice. So that became habit number 4, which is click every click and just practice. You've done all this work. Let's make sure that you don't fail because of some minor thing that you just didn't think of.
And Murphy Law always strikes. And I'll be authentic here. And you might have seen me like trying to fuss over here.
Yeah.
Murphy Law today for me is my PC fan is going crazy, and I'm trying to like make it stop doing that. We practiced kind of the technical parts a couple times, but stuff always happens.
Yeah.
But
Indeed.
yeah, but you need to make sure you de-risk that as much as possible by practicing that stuff.
Exactly.
So yeah. So and again, I think tying it back to your other principles, if you have a good partnership and you tell them, hey, I need to budget time for the practice, they might see it's unnecessary. But if you have a good partnership, if you are comfortable saying this is me time and you have your me time, and I need this, and you have that trust and built that, they'll say, yeah, no problem, right? Versus a surprise to them, then you kind of snowball issues in the relationship.
Exactly. Incredibly well said. And that honestly goes back to habits 2 and 3 as well, right? I mean, a lot of times our sales counterparts are reluctant to have us to do discovery because they don't want us asking the same questions, which is valid, by the way, right? They don't want the customer to feel like, how many times do I have to answer questions, right? But we have to develop that trust, right? And by the way, part of it is earning that trust. Right. Same with prepare. If I legitimately need 2 or 3 days to prepare, like there has to be a level of trust there. So you're absolutely right. That's incredibly profound. Yep.
Cool. So partner, probe, prepare, practice. You know what? I just realized they're all P's.
You're getting it. G, you're getting it. I'm leading you right down the path. Don't you see what I'm doing here?
Okay, tell us the 5th P.
Okay, now before I go to the 5th P, I just want to tie practice to today's world.
Okay.
And the one comment that I'll make is now is the perfect time for all of us to become either Zoom experts, Teams experts, GoToMeeting experts, whatever your
Slack.
Video, right? Slack, Slack experts, 8x8 experts, whatever video conferencing platform you use, become the team expert because this is our life now, right? These literally are our conference rooms now. So let's all be let's practice those technologies. So so that moves us to perform. And what I like to say, and again, I mean, this is one of the reasons that I got into the role. And I mentioned that I could move a mouse and talk at the same time. And it's probably obvious to people watching at home. I love the spotlight, and I love being on stage, right? And I enjoy being at the head of the room, right? Mm-hmm. But here's the reality: is that regardless of the partnership, regardless of how well you did discovery, regardless of the preparation and practice, at some point, the spotlight shines on us. There's nowhere to hide, and we need to perform under the spotlight. And what I learned, and by the way, even I took some lumps here, is that a pre-sales conversation is just different, and a pre-sales presentation or demonstration is just different than a post-sales conversation,
Absolutely,
right?
yep.
And many of us come from a post-sales technical role, right? And we don't understand that. Some of the mistakes that we make is we sort of treat a demo or a technical presentation like training, but it's not training. We're not there to teach them how to use the software, right?
Mm-hmm.
We treat it like a consulting engagement, but we're not there to solve all the problems. What we're there to do is show them what's possible and how the solution will help them meet their needs and solve their problems, right?
Yep.
And I learned that there's a very specific set of best practices. And in fact, in this particular section, I've got like 20 very specific best practices, right? That we need to sort of lean on, right? And leverage to do what? To get the technical win. That's our job, is to get the technical win, right? And you know, we certainly don't have time to go through them, but it's in some cases, it's simple things, but easy to forget. Knowing the players, right? And what role they are,
Mm-hmm.
right? You know, another author in the space his name is Brian Geary. He talks about making the James Bond entry, right? And Peter Cohen talks about begin with the end, right? Like, we're so inclined to want to show them all the steps that it took to sort of get to where they got, and then we show them the magic. We need to reverse that equation, right? We need to show the magic up front. We need to know how to answer questions. And again, I've got an entire section on that, and we won't get into it, but I believe that the way in which we answer questions makes or breaks a deal. I truly believe that. And we need to develop those skills. So anyway, unfortunately, like I said, unfortunately, we can't go through all of them. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
Yeah, I was going to say I can relate, because I definitely took lumps in this aspect. When we were talking about earlier, as SCs, when we evolve, we hit these walls, and that performance aspect was definitely one of those walls. And just like you alluded to, I came from a pre-sale, a post-sales type of role. So, you know, different set of goals, right? Your goal is to implement and at times just transfer knowledge. But in a pre-sales role, totally different dynamics, totally different goals. And I guess connecting the performance aspect from, you know, of that component, how that's important, then it clicked for me right away early on in my career. So I can totally relate to that.
Yeah.
Gee, I'm out there. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, I shot. Yeah.
All right. Hey, by the way, we're just letting you know from the chat there, it's very engaging. You guys are doing great.
Yeah. This is what I mean about the community. On the side of my eye, I've been seeing an awesome exchange of folks just kind of chiming in, saying hi to each other. This is awesome. But Akshat, sounds like you have a good question to ask.
Yeah, so I have a great question. The chat's great. So one of the questions people are talking about is our recorded demo. So let me just ask the person. So it's Jason Pena. Thank you, Jason Pena, to ask the question. He's asking, are recorded demos considered lazy, or is it encouraged to circumvent those unknowns?
I'm gonna repeat the question first, Doc Shot, just to make sure I have it. So the question is about recorded demos, and the first part of the question is, are recorded demos lazy?
Are they considered lazy, or is it encouraged to circumvent those unknowns?
I'll admit that the second part of the question, I'm not sure I'm fully understanding what unknowns we're trying to circumvent, but I'm just gonna answer the first part of the question from my vantage point. Do I think a recorded demo is lazy? I'm gonna say yes or no, right? Depends on how that recorded demo is being used. I think if, you know, recorded demos can be used very, very effectively if they're just intended to be sort of a teaser, right? If they're a marketing collateral intended to, you know, sort of drive interest or sort of gain interest, I think they can be incredibly effective. if we're using a recorded demo to replace a sales engineer, and by the way, I mean, the very things that we're talking about, right, is you know, if it's a recorded demo, how do we haven't done any probing? How do we know for sure that it aligns with what they're trying to do, right? And people don't people don't buy because of what you demo. They just don't, right? They buy because they become convinced that the solution that you're presenting is actually going to meet their needs and solve their problems. So I guess the short answer is yes or no, depending on how it's being used.
Yeah, so if I may chime in here, I think the question was addressing the practice section, meaning, you know, Murphy laws can kick in, bad stuff can happen. So in order to circumvent that, why not just, you know, do a golden path video that, so I would say same answer, yes and no. The only danger I would say is if you're ever inauthentic, back to our authenticity, and like trying to like, you know, do a 3-car Monty and saying, yeah, here's a live demo, but it's not really, that would not be a good thing. You know, maybe explain, you know, the reason why I don't have an environment set up, so therefore there's video to kind of get right to the point.
Yeah.
I don't see any issue with that. But obviously there is an, you know, kind of a, just like this live video session, there is a exciting aspect of doing it live, right? That people kind of gravitate towards. So you lose a little bit of that, but otherwise I think there's a place for it.
Yeah. Yeah. So getting back to, so we were talking about, you know, perform, right? And, you know, one of the things that I discovered is that and sort of I correlate it to dating, right? There's certain things that we would and would not say on a first date, right? That we might or might not say after 10 years of marriage, right? And to me, it's very kind of analogous to that. You know what I mean?
Yep. Your best foot forward.
It is, I love that you said that. It is our job to put our best foot forward. And by the way, when I say put our best foot forward, I don't mean our personal best foot forward, although that's a part of it. It's our responsibility to put the best foot forward on behalf of the product, on behalf of the company, on behalf of our colleagues, right? That's our job, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And to your point, you know, before most of us got into this role as technical experts, not only were we expected typically to show up and be the smartest person in the room, we reveled in being the smartest person in the room. In this role, sometimes it's necessary to not be the smartest person in the room and let our customers know that they're actually the smartest person in the room. Right. Yep. So there's, to me, this may very well be my favorite part of the job, right? Is like I said, at the end of the day, the spotlight's on us, and it's not there is no one size fits all, and it's a constant dance, right? And it's a finesse, and it takes years, in my opinion, to really develop sort of, you know, that skill. But I think we can shortcut that sort of development. So again, I'll pause. Any additional thoughts from you on that one? I don't know if I can't hear you.
Sorry.
Okay.
See, I didn't practice enough. My mute mic, my cough mic.
That's quite all right.
So I was saying thank you for the question, and I just want to point out that for folks who want to ask questions, keep them coming, and then Akshat will bubble them up. Definitely a good point in terms of the performance aspect. So moving on.
Actually, before we move on, can we just take a moment and sort of tie it to today's world?
Please.
So again, similar to Probe, I was thinking about this, in fact, earlier today, and most of the people that have worked with me would even probably be surprised to hear this come out of my voice. And it's not entirely unlike what you were saying earlier, G. I actually think now is if there's any time to sort of dial down sort of the sales meter, now's the time, right? I still think it's a performance on some level. I still think there are certain things that we need to say and do as effective sales engineers, but I truly believe right now that people don't want to be sold to more than ever. I mean, people never really want to be sold to, but people don't want to be sold to more than ever. And so I think we need to, wherever you are on the salesy scale, and admittedly, I'm pretty high on the salesy scale, I think we sort of need to dial it down a little bit just during this time.
I'd like to dig into that. I mean, that's super interesting to me. I guess, in your mind, what aspects of, being quote unquote salesy is a turnoff for these times? I mean, because when I look at you, I disagree. I don't think you're, you seem authentic. I don't think you're trying to, pull one over me.
Yeah.
So yeah, help me make that connection.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. And I wish I could tell you, I wish I had the magic words that would say this is what I mean. And, I'm honestly not sure I do. I think it's just more of, maybe it's just more of a mindset. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And look, I mean, I'll be very, very transparent. I mean, and many of you know this, some of you don't. I mean, I literally officially launched my business 6 weeks ago, right? Clearly I have great timing, right? And as I said, I mean, I speak to a lot of sales engineer leaders, and a lot of the conversations have literally ended with me saying, I feel like I just need to ask, is there anything I can do to help you right now? That's all I'm asking. Do you have any specific needs with the team? Is there anything I can do to help? Right? And that's not me asking for business. That's a sincere, heartfelt, I've got some skills and some capabilities and some services, and I'm ready, willing, and eager. But what I'm really interested is do you need any help right now? And I've had quite a few people say, honestly, not right now. We're just sort of focused on things going on and we're good. And I've had a few other people say, actually, now that you mention it, there are a couple things that I might need some help with, and I say, well, then great. Then, maybe in our next call, we can talk about that. So maybe that's about as close as I can put my finger on it.
I think I know what direction you're going. It's kind of, presenting, maybe I feel like it's relevant to, the second principle, which is probe, and your underlying principle of that is understanding the story and knowing and understanding stories, understanding the problem that this customer had.
Yeah.
So by you doing that properly, doing the probing and saying, hey, I want to invest my time to understand your problem.
Absolutely.
You and I want to understand you as a person. I want to understand any problems you have right now, those probe aspects. I think you won't have a danger of what you've been saying, which is dial down the sales aspect, because as long as you're addressing exactly what they told you, then there's no talking at you type of sales, right?
Yeah. Well, and by the way, I'm going to go back to the two words that you used earlier, which is, authenticity and empathy. I mean, again, like I said, we probably could have ended the webinar then. I mean, I think if we really develop that mindset, I think not only are we doing our customers, a service, right? We're also doing our sales counterparts a service, and we're going to feel better about our role and our situation as well. So I think that's great. So, okay, now we can move on to habit 6. I know people are.
Thank you for stopping me there. I think that was super interesting, at least to me.
Yeah. So habit number 6 is, and I have to even give a shout out by name. I don't think he's on, but the first hiring manager that I ever had, the gentleman that hired me, gave me my first job in this role, is a gentleman named Jim Lee. We work for a company called Telelogic, And early on, sort of under his, guidance, one of the things he told me is, he said, Chris, if I'm ever in a demo and the customer asks me a question that I can't answer, when the customer asks a question about the solution that the solution sort of can't address, he said, I make it my personal business to do my homework and figure out, how can I answer that question better? Mm-hmm. Or is there some workaround that I can build into the solution so that if they ask me that again, I can sort of pull it out of, pull it out of the hat, so to speak. And that's sort of a micro example of that. But the lesson learned for me, and by the way, and I discovered this for myself, was that I would find myself being asked questions that I couldn't answer. And maybe it wasn't something to do with the tool. It's a question that I couldn't answer personally. I didn't have the knowledge or the experience. I made it my business to make sure I made a note of it. And the next chance I had, the next moment of downtime I had, I did some homework and I figured it out. And if it was sort of a gap in the solution, I went about, figuring out, is there some way, or can I come up with some combination, of sort of features that would sort of answer that question. And if I couldn't, I would reach out to the product managers and say, hey, I just want to let you guys know I had this question and I couldn't answer it. And I don't know if you have it in your pipe, in your roadmap or not. So that's sort of how the habit number 6 evolved, which is to perfect our demo and to perfect our craft. And I want to make sure I'm clear. I've had a few people say, are you saying we need the perfect demo? No, I don't believe in such a thing. There's no such thing as the perfect demo. And the time investment to try to create, quote, the perfect demo rarely justifies, the time. What I am saying is it's the habit of continuous improvement, right? Mm-hmm. And if I may, the final thought, and then I'll pause, is a big part of that too is the debrief with your sales counterpart after a demo, after a meeting, after an engagement, right? Is to reach out and say, how do you think that went? Were you satisfied with the demo, with the meeting? What could we have done differently? What could I have done differently, right? That was one of the parts, driving back from a meeting. I know we're not driving right now, but driving back from a meeting with my sales counterpart, sort of having that sort of, discussion, sort of analyzing the meeting. That was one of my favorite parts, of engaging with the customer. So I'll pause there. That sort of rounds out the model, is to perfect, to consistently and constantly perfect our craft and perfect the demo.
Yeah, and I can relate to this as well. My takeaway is, and I was alluding to earlier in my career, you kind of, hit the different phases. I went through a phase of completely feeling ill-equipped to, I can do both roles. I can do everything without preparing, to the point where you don't really need to, you feel like you don't need to improve, right? But as I got older, I know how much I don't know, and I'm constantly, for example, video software, like you said, we have to learn that. This is a new world to me, getting that craft. But there's a bunch of people who has honed that down, and I'm totally humbled by how much I don't know and how much they know. So if anything, nowadays I have an attitude of, there's so much I need to perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, Akshat, hold on just a sec. I just have one final thought, and then I think we'll open up to questions. So the final thought that I have, and I love what you said, G, so many of us who have been doing this for a while, you mentioned the gray hair. I don't see any gray hair in your hair, but I know I've got plenty of gray hair here.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
is that the moment we think we've figured it all out, right, is the moment we start making assumptions. Yep. And the moment we start making assumptions is the moment we frankly get caught with our pants down, right? We sort of get caught completely and totally unprepared, right? So I love what you said that. And sort of how does this habit apply to today? As far as I'm concerned, what we're really talking about is sharpen the saw. Yep. There is no better time, probably, in certainly our lives, right? And maybe certainly the modern day history than now to sharpen the saw.
Mhm.
We don't have NHL, which breaks my heart. And I know there's a bunch of New York people that are gonna, get mad at me for being a Washington Capitals fan. But we don't have NHL. We don't have the NBA. We didn't have March Madness. And we can't even go out. We can hardly even go outside and play. So now's the opportunity, I think, for us to work on our craft, sharpen the saw, and take advantage, of this opportunity in that regard.
Yeah.
So,
and if I can quickly add, in addition to, sharpening your kind of professional skills, now is the time to kind of be introspective and know the balance that you need for yourself to be effective, professional. I know being at home, I feel like I work more heads down, intense work. And then at the end of the day, even though my kids are right outside the door, I kind of feel like exhausted. So I'm checking myself in perfecting balance and my mindset and, taking a walk outside, distancing, taking a breath of fresh air, come back in, so that's aspect that I'm learning about myself. And I think now's the time to do that as well, right?
Yeah. No, it's perfect.
Right.
And frankly, that sounds like a perfect way to wrap. So Akshat, do
Yes.
you want to bring some questions to the table?
Yes. So I have a couple of comments. First of all, one comment really, really well said by our member, Marina. She said, leading with empathy and compassion is what's important right now in today's environment.
Amen.
Yeah.
And a lot of people agreed with that. What do you guys have to say about that?
As Chris said, that should be that's kind of the takeaway today. Chris?
Yeah.
Great.
Empathy and authenticity and compassion, I think, is another great word. Perfect.
Yeah. Thanks, Marina.
Perfect. And then there's one more question we have. How do you differentiate a demo versus proof of concept to the sales rep and the customer?
Yeah, it's interesting, and I'm glad whoever asked that question. I'm glad they asked that question for a couple reasons, actually.
It's Owen.
Owen, awesome, good. It's a great question, Owen. So first of all, I have to call myself out because I overuse the word demo, and I'm the first to admit it. Even in the book, I refer to demo regularly. And when I say demo, what I'm really saying is customer interaction and customer engagement. Sometimes it is a software demo. Sometimes it's a presentation, right? Sometimes it might be a proof of technology or a proof of concept, right? The habits that we talked about really apply regardless of what the actual interaction with the customer is. That being said, I was having a chat with a gentleman just last week, and in speaking with him, he's actually the CEO of another new product company specifically for sales engineers called DemoFlow, and they have a solution. Part of their solution is sort of sending out automated emails after a demo and scheduling next steps and all that. And I told him I realized that there's a habit that I didn't include in my model. And G, you'll appreciate this. It's also a P word, and that's pursue. And to me, one of the things that logically follows an effective, a successful demo is a request for an evaluation or a request for a proof of concept. And we need to support those as well. And when we get to that point in the life cycle, we're now part of the pursuit of that customer to close that deal, right? So these principles and rules apply to that as well. So Owen, I know you can't speak, but hopefully that.
So slight correction. I think the question was asked by MJ. Thank you for your question, rather than Owen.
Thank you.
I just reposted it. Yeah, thank you, MJ.
Okay, so hopefully that addresses MJ's question.
That's good, guys. So I think it's time to actually wrap it up, guys.
All right.
And we need to announce the raffle winner here. So I have a series of steps to make sure everyone attending knows that this is not a setup and it's actually perfectly fair.
We trust you.
Drum roll, please.
One quick thing, Akshat. Can I ask Chris, where can we find you? And tell us briefly about Demo Doctor, please.
Yeah, of course. So first of all, you can find me at www.demodoctor.com. Demo Doctor is all one word, and doctor is spelled out. It turns out I've had to explain that to a few people. very simply, Demo Doctor is a consulting, business that helps companies, frankly, fix demos that, kill or delay software deals. And it's really, there's three components. There's training, and I run workshops for sales and sales engineers. And then, of course, I actually do demo assessments and help, actually help with the demo itself. In fact, I just announced a 6-week boot camp, a remote online boot camp that's going to start next week. So if anybody obviously cares to sign up for that, you'll get, if you can take it, you'll get me for an hour once a week for 6 weeks, plus all my online material. And then, of course, the book is available on Amazon, The 6 Habits of Highly Effective Sales Engineers. And, as I'm sure everyone, at home listening can tell, I'm passionate about this stuff. Been doing this a long time. And, I'm thrilled anytime I'm invited to have the opportunity to speak. I'm just delighted to do so because I just love talking about this stuff. So again, G, thank you so much. It's been great to speak with you and Akshat and the team. Thank you.
Likewise, it was my pleasure, and we really appreciate it. I enjoyed the conversation. And speaking of empathy, everyone, Chris did an awesome favor for us and then bumped down the price for the Kindle book just for us. And, anybody who has access to it to $1. It's obviously an obvious buy. So everyone buy it, buy the digital copy or the printout. And thank you, Chris, again.
It's my pleasure.
Perfect.
Thanks, guys.
Perfect. Can everyone, so let's do this. Can everyone see my screen, the raffle? All right.
Yes.
So what this is everyone who RSVP'd, right? And I want to explain the rules real quick. All the names are here. Okay. 159 RSVPs. The rules are that, so there's a random function right here. I'm using a number between 3 and the last row here, which is 161. And anyone can basically be chosen. So I want not the panelists, but anyone else on the phone, pick a number between 0 and 5 and write it in the chat. And that's how many times I will click the calculate now. 5, 4, 3, 3, 3, 5. Okay. So I got 3 3s. So I'll click it 3 times and I'll do it again repeatedly until we have a person who can claim the prize. And if it's one of us panelists or founders, we cannot claim the prize. Okay. So here it goes. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Boom. There you go. So I'll do it again. 1, 2, 3. Is Tony on the line? Tony Mose. Do we have Tony Mose? Nope. Okay. Wait, is Tony there? Can someone put in the chat?
Name is Anthony. He's here.
Yes, sir. Congratulations.
Right. Congrats, Anthony.
Anthony.
So Anthony, did he message? I'm not seeing the messages. Just make it.
He's saying Anthony Palmose is his real name, but he goes by Tony Mose.
Okay. Anthony Palmose. Cool. So just message me on Slack and let me know your email and address, and we have a winner. Congratulations, you win AirPods Pro. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, G. And we hope to see you in the next virtual happy hour.